everyone, I read another Misadventures book, Misadventures of the First Daughter by Meredith Wild and Maya Michelle. They're always like kind of doubling on the authors with these books. This one is actually really good. This isn't like a series or anything, it's just a story, like, and then another story and then another story. And I do believe there's like over 20 of these books. But this book is about a 19-year-old girl, the first daughter obviously, and it's fiction, definitely fiction. And she and her parents, the president and the first lady, kind of just go about their lives and like kind of just ignore her and like let her live her own life. And she was in New York for college and went back to the White House for a little bit, and they were trying to control her life, like move her, like her studies to Washington DC and stuff, and she like got really upset about it, and she actually is kind of stepping out of line, being a little bit of a bad girl, trying to get her parents' attention, and it works out, but it definitely doesn't work out the way she was hoping. And her bodyguard actually is a dominant on his own time and ends up being her dominant, kind of like 50 Shades, really, like seriously, like actually a shorter version of 50 Shades, I would say. And he kind of teaches her how to be good and awards her and punishes her. And there's this one time where it was his night off, and she went to her friend's house and ditched her bodyguard that she had, and went to this underground sex club. And he was actually there being a dominant, looking for a girl in red, and she was obviously dressed in red, and what that meant is that she was a submissive waiting to be like possessed, or like with some, like a dominant. And they went into a private room that he rented out, and it showed, there was like a one-way mirror, and it showed the other submissive and a dominant, and he was like, see how like controlled he has, full control of her, and he totally trusts her. And then that's like puts all her trust in his hands, and that's what you need to do. And he she like gives into it, and he rewards her a little bit. And I don't really want to go into full detail, because this, I would definitely recommend not to let anyone who's like at a younger age read these books at all. These are strictly for adults, and I will say, if you're like under 18, don't even watch this. And anyway, then she goes off and she gets busted because he calls the bodyguard that she had, and he comes and picks her up, and they have like a heart-to-heart, and he was like, oh, I'm not worried about my job, because she was like, oh, I'm sorry I put your job at risk. It's like, I'm not worried about my job, I'm worried about you. I protect you and I care about you. And then she gets all emotional. And meantime, like the friend that she was with the the head guy of the whole organization, and she ended up like wanting to be with him, but then that didn't work out because she was just too much of a party girl, and she actually ended up getting too drunk to go and meet him one night. So that was quite fun and to read. And when they were at that party, she actually ended up calling her bodyguard, who is actually now her boyfriend, because they she ended up getting renting a apartment in his duplex. And he was like, oh, you can't come to my apartment's off limits, I'll come to your apartment, trying to still be the dominant. and she was like, oh, there's so many rules, my entire life was rules, and you said that this would be like an outlet. And yeah, and then that was fun. And then he ends up like totally falling in love with her, kind of, definitely, just like I said, like 50 Shades. And then they end up being together and like putting aside the dominant thing and actually just being together. And there was this time, in this whole time period, a spoiled little rotten bat in the DC world, government DC world, is totally into her and totally thinks, like, treats her like she's his property. And actually, and the mom, the first lady in this, is totally like a Stanford wife type and is trying to marry her off to the senator's son, which that's what it is, the senator's son. And he's a total douchebag, and he actually ends up, but he puts the charm on for the parents, and he actually ends up kidnapping her with a gun, takes her back to his place. And the whole time, the reason why she's like all like, I don't want anything to do with him, don't let him near me, is he actually almost tried to rape her at one point at one of his parties, and the bodyguard that she ends up with breaks it up. And anyway, and then so then he kidnaps her, and then this is actually when the other bodyguard's on duty and her boyfriend slash bodyguard is off duty, and he loses contact. They go to a university like walkthrough where she gets to see everything, and the bad guy in this story is setting it all up, and the mom like lets them go off together and tells the bodyguard to give them privacy, and then he ends up throwing her up against the wall, pulls out his gun and like says like, you're leaving with me, and goes to his like dad's house and tries to get her to go into the back like pool house and tries to rape her. And the whole time like someone notices they're gone and like calls like everybody, and then it gets really hard too because the mom doesn't even think that she's in danger. She's like, oh, I'm not even considering my daughter in danger, she's fine, she's with that one boy. And so the off-duty bodyguard slash boyfriend like shows up because he's the only one who can, and he ends up like getting there before everyone else, and then ends up like pulling out his gun, and she ends up in the crossfires. And next thing you know, like he's bluffing, saying, we have you surrounded, and he's like, yeah, right. And somehow the other bodyguard that's like the head bodyguard guy, but ends up, that was supposed to be her bodyguard at that time period, shows up. Like a helicopter, everyone shows up, and he's like, he has her in her arms and has a gun to her head, and he's like, we will shoot you. And then he throws her, and she goes running to her boyfriend, gets behind her boyfriend, and he acts like he's gonna put the gun down, but he doesn't, and he kind of like does this like halfway where he shoots, and it's he's shooting at her, but her boyfriend jumps in and gets her, and it goes through his shoulder, and it's like, oh, it just brushed, like, and they both go down, the first daughter and the bodyguard both goes down, and he's like, oh, I'm fine, it went straight through, it just went straight through. And then of course like she's behind him, and like it punctures her lungs, and he's freaking out thinking like he's gonna lose her and she's gonna die. And like that's and they're trying to keep their relationship private, and of course when the way he reacted kind of like sets it off like there's something more. And next thing, she's getting airlifted, and he's getting driven to the hospital to get his shoulder checked out. And when he gets out of the hospital, the president, her dad, and like calls him in the office and like asks to him to look at this folder because that boy like sent a spy and took pictures of them being together like against the window, and he was like, what's this? And he was basically just showing everything, and he was actually also filming and taking pictures of his almost raping her too, and those were the first pictures, and it ends up going to like them together, and it was nuts. And they were the president, her dad said like, you're not allowed to see her. You took a bullet for her, so I'll take like care of you like financially, and like you got a job obviously always, but you're never allowed to see her again. And he goes to her room, like pats her on the head like a dog, and was basically the same thing. You're never gonna see him, you can't see him, you're getting shipped back to New York, and that's final. A year goes by, a whole year goes by, and she is a painter. That's what she was going for school for, was like being a painter and all that, and her parents were trying to get her to be a lawyer, so trying to push her to DC, and that's why she was busting out and freaking out and acting out. And so she goes off and she has this gallery opening, and her parents don't show up because they think her paintings are disrespectful or distasteful. But he ends up showing up, and he actually does not work for the White House anymore. He's quit after they took her away, and has been in New York for that entire year, but was like trying to give her space. And he's actually working for a private organization. And when he shows up at her gallery, he has to go through the back door and go through all these channels, because once again, she's the first daughter. He can't just walk straight up to her without all the bodyguards going like WTF. And so he has to go through this whole channel thing of like, this message gets to that message, gets to that person, that gets to that person, finally gets to the first daughter. And she was like, yeah, okay, it's some weird friends here, okay, so I'll go see who it is. And ends up seeing him. And they end up like going into a private room where she has her purse and all that, and ends up like just jumping in each other's arms without even saying like hello first. And then after breaking up a little bit, they got like a conversation going, saying like, oh, and then she's like, you've been here for a year? Like, yeah, but I was just trying to give you space. I don't work for your dad anymore. I work for this organization now. And she was like, huh. And then you could tell the wheels are growing, and she's starting to think, it's like, there's nothing stopping us from being together anymore. And so she was like, hey, why don't we just walk out of here in front of all the cameras and just like finally be together? They can't stop us now. I'm all the way in New York, and you don't work for him anymore, so he can't hurt you anymore. And so, and he's like, well, what about your, like, everyone and the hostile and the whole pictures and all that? And she was like, everyone's gonna love the fact that I'm like happy. I'm like the American princess. Everyone wants me to be happy. And so they actually ended up being together in the end, happily ever after. The end. And that is my book review. I actually really enjoy these misadventures, and the misadventures are like adult books. I'm gonna say this one more time. They are definitely adult books, but these books are so good. I will put these in the 50 Shades good bracket, or the Lindsay Sand like vampire romance-y books. I would definitely put these in the same category. They're romance, they're adult erotica, and they are so damn good. And I would highly suggest to pick one up. There are 20 of these, and this is only my second one, and I don't even and I read the very first one that was ever published, and this is like the third book The second one was like more of a high school-y, like cheerleader, football player type, and I just figured I wouldn't be into that because it's like high school, and so I wanted something a little bit more adulty. And I will definitely keep looking into these and seeing which storyline I like most and get a third one. Or maybe I would probably like the fourth one. Who knows? But I would highly suggest this one, The First Daughter, Misadventures by Meredith Mead and Mia Michelle. Get these books. And that is my book review on The Misadventures of the First Daughter. Have a great night. Bye bye.